Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Future Triton Parents and Family Insights webinar. The purpose of today's webinar is to share helpful information on how you can provide your first year or transfer applicant as they await their admission decision. We'll also introduce you to UC San Diego resources and provide insight into the university your student has applied to. As noted in our prior communications, this webinar has no impact on the admission decisions, and we will not be sharing any decision information. First-year applicants can expect decisions to be released by the end of March, while transfer applicants will receive decisions by the end of April. Students will be notified via email and can access their decisions through their student portal. If your student has not already done so, please encourage them to log into their portal now to ensure they are prepared when decisions are released. Here are a few housekeeping notes before we begin. This 60-minute webinar is designed to provide helpful information about UC San Diego and to share resources you can use to stay informed and support your student throughout the application process. We will not be taking live questions during today's presentation. However, we encourage you to actively engage with the content. We'll be sharing many helpful links in the chat. Feel free to open them, bookmark them, and explore them in more detail at your convenience. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available in approximately 2 weeks on our undergraduate admission events recording page. Most importantly, this webinar will not impact your student's application process in any way, and no admissions decision will be shared during this event. This session is simply an opportunity to learn more about UC San Diego and what the future may hold for your student. Lastly, closed captioning is available. To enable captions, click the live transcript icon in your Zoom toolbar and select Show Captions to turn on automated captions. We encourage all of you to view recordings of previous Future Triton webinars, as well as other informative sessions created by the admissions team. To access past webinars, visit our undergraduate admission events recordings page by clicking the Resource tab and selecting Event Recordings. From there, you can choose between student-focused recordings or parent and family recordings. Much of the content remains relevant, especially as you and your student await admission decisions. These recordings provide valuable insight into UC San Diego's colleges, academic programs, campus resources, and other helpful topics. We encourage you to spend some time reviewing them and to invite your student to watch them as well. Per UC policy, we are unable to provide application-specific information to parents, family members, or school counselors. All application information may be shared only with the applicant directly. Please keep this in mind both before and after admission decisions are released. If your student has any questions about their application, they must contact us directly. For general questions, we encourage you to visit our FAQ section, which contains a wide range of helpful information, or submit an inquiry by selecting the Resource tab and clicking Contact Us. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our MC for this special webinar, Jim Rollins. Jim Rollins holds the position of Associate Vice Chancellor of Enrollment Management at UC San Diego. Jim, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you very much, Griselda, and everyone. We're so glad you're here. Some of you have come to previous monthly webinars, and if so, welcome back. If this is your first one, we hope it won't be your last one. As Griselda has indicated in a few ways during her wonderful intro for all of this, we try to do these about once a month right now. And so we will have some others both before decisions are made and after our admissions decisions are made. But we're so glad you're with us. And again, this is very specifically geared towards parents and families of our applicants. If you are one of our actual applicants, we're not going to tell on you. It's perfectly great that you're here. But just so you'll know, our idea today is really mainly to speak to the folks that are the wind beneath your wings, so to speak, the folks that are supporting your process. So again, parents and families, welcome. And Best wishes, not just for your students' process here at UC San Diego, but this is a transition of some kind to somewhere for all of them, and we wish them the best with that. As we do each month, we have a couple of guests to start us off and to be a good chunk of the day. And then after those two guests, I'll cover some of the general questions you all have asked, and some great questions came in as always. Our first guest today is going to be Dr. David Artis. And we're so glad you're with us, Dr. Artis. David has been with us. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit in a second. But again, he's Dean of Undergraduate Research Advancement and the director of our Undergraduate Research Hub. We know a lot of you will want to know about what research opportunities there are for your students. So David, welcome, and we're so glad you can be with us this afternoon.
Thank you. It's really honestly my pleasure to join you. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope that as people develop a relationship with the UC San Diego, that I get to know some people when their students are here and family members come to visit. I'm always available.
That's terrific. And David, just a couple of basic reminders. Tell us how long you've been at UC San Diego, and if you've ever been in any other roles besides this one.
So in November, I think I hit 25 years.
Wow.
I came here from the University of Michigan, where I had been a faculty member, professor, an assistant professor, and then I worked in the graduate school, and I worked also in the School of Public Health as director of academic services.
Mm-hmm.
That's relevant just because my time in the graduate school and in the professional school gave me a really strong insight as to, I think, what helps students succeed when they move on to those next stages for those who want to go to grad school or work in a professional school environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I came here as director of the academic enrichment programs, which is kind of a precursor to the Undergraduate Research Hub. Some time ago, I had other duties added to that. So I went from being a director to being a dean. The Undergraduate Research Hub really does strive to be a hub. So we expanded our connections all over campus and actually made more programs available to students where they could go off campus to other campuses, other universities. Just last year, we added a program where we were able to send 4 students to do international work over the summer. And so we're always looking at making the hub a true clearinghouse for students. And so we have our office, which I think you'll see the location of our webpage, and we have a very strong tie to programs all over campus. We work with students in all fields, and we work with government agencies, private foundations, and as I said, we have strong ties to international and post-baccalaureate programs as well.
That's fantastic. So, wow, that's just such great. I mean, you've literally built this out with us and for us. We appreciate it so much. As we look at that word research, I know a lot of families are like, what does that even mean? Does that mean my student will have on a white lab coat? Let's start with some basic questions here. What are some common ways that our undergraduates can get involved in research when they're here?
So it's very, very important to know that you need multiple ways to reach undergraduates. We talk about reaching students where they are. There are some students who arrive at a campus like this, and they know where our office is. They know how to write a cover letter introducing themselves to a faculty member. There are some very talented students who are not aware of the ways that they can get involved in undergraduate research. I was very much like that when I was a first-year student in college. It sort of became clear to me after a few months that some of my classmates were doing really interesting things outside of the classroom, but working closely with faculty members and other kinds of mentors. So we make a point of having as many opportunities to meet students in very different ways. Sometimes we'll work with their colleges. We'll work with student organizations. We'll do tabling. We work with departments. We really try to have a strong web presence that's linked to other places on campus that we know the students will visit. Just this afternoon, we had drop-in hours at the BRC, the Black Resource Center on campus, so people who are there can ask us questions about research. We really think that some of the best researchers on this campus are coming in as first-year students, transfer students, or people who are maybe first-generation students, and they have a lot to give and contribute, but they don't know the process. So we try to make the process as accessible as possible. So that's the first thing, is that look for us. We're on campus. Some things that students do, and we really offer support here. As I said, we work with student organizations, and we'll make presentations there, and we'll talk to them about what faculty members they've looked up and asked about possibly being a mentor, because it will start always with coming to the attention of a faculty member and making sure that you, as a student, make clear that you are actually willing to contribute. We don't like students watching research. We like students being active research participants. So we encourage them to work with us. We'll help them write letters. We'll help them make cold calls if people apply to our programs. Very often the program will not require that they have a mentor. If we think this is a talented student, we will help that student find a mentor. And if you look at our website, actually, we have some tabs, including ones that help students identify mentors. I really think that we also want our advanced students to be ambassadors for the program. So we tell them to talk to first-year students. I am actually the faculty advisor for the Scholar Society, and work with them to contact Regent Scholars, new Regent Scholars. We started a program where they can do research their first year here. We really think that there are so many ways that students will encounter research opportunity, and maybe they don't recognize it. So we need to be there in the colleges. We need to be there in the Raza Resource Central. We need to be at the Price Center, telling them where these opportunities are. We can't wait for them to find our building.
Yeah. I think there's a simple answer to this, but is there such a thing as looking too early for these research opportunities? I mean, what's some basic strategic tips? So
Yeah.
parents and families, what should they encourage their students to say, don't do it until then, or make sure you do it by then? What's the advice?
Well, I think sometimes people are a little surprised when I say this. I think that there isn't a start date. We don't have a track meet where all the students line up at the track at the same time. So I say that because I think students should really get involved with research when they're able to make that commitment. And some will do that the first week they're here, and that's great. But this is a really wide, varied, rich community. And we've had students who have come in after a year, and they spent the first year being athletes, or they've been performers, or they've looked at other kinds of things they can do at this university. And we want to make sure that we don't say do research instead of something else that's very important to you. Right. So as I said, we don't think it's ever too late to do research. We work with a lot of upper division students who've spent 2 years in the performing arts, or 2 years as an athlete, or 2 years in community involvement. And some of those experiences really relate directly to their skills as a researcher. So the first message is we're always here. We love it when students take advantage of the university. We really do think it's great if first-year students want to do research and start building the kinds of credentials that will move them to the next step. But as I said, it's never too late to work on a research program after you've done something else that's maybe equally important to you, and that in its own way might make you a better researcher. So I would say certainly students can come and talk to us anytime and really get a good understanding of the opportunities that are available to them. And then they might come back a year later when they've done something else, when they've traveled, when they've written a play and had it produced, when they've done an internship. So I really don't want students to feel that if they don't do research right away, they've missed an opportunity, because it's always going to be valuable. And we can work with students, even students who are a year from graduating, if they want to go on to medical school or law school or PhD program, we can still keep them on that path. It doesn't have to be something that the students do and deny themselves some of the other opportunities to really get the most out of a university like this.
Yeah. And there are so many things they can do here. Uh, Parents and families, if you don't know this, and it always takes a while to compile this, but the last really full year we measured, I believe, David, I'm correct, that for both undergrads and grads and the faculty themselves doing research, I believe we brought in, what was it, like $1.7 billion in research funding, and that's probably one of the top 5 or 6 in the country.
Yes, yes.
So that's a really great environment to be in. Some of this research, they may be producing actual papers, I guess, but more broadly speaking, what are some of the other biggest benefits you think there will be about getting involved in some way at some point?
Well, there's so many, and one that's really apparent is that it helps students decide on their career path. The students who have a research experience, and this is something I always say. There are students who have a research experience, and their first reaction is, "I need more of this." One research experience, doing a quarter or doing a summer, is not going to be enough for those students. They are on their way to being full-time scholars, researchers, and not just in the sciences, but in the arts and humanities as well. So there are people who have that first research experience, and they just know this is it. They're on their right path. Um, so I think that, there are those kinds of opportunities that we can support for students to have a program, and we can help them find another one. In our office, we have ways for students to be involved with our office, just our programs, for 2 years, 3 years, going from one program to another. And I think that that's great. Obviously, the more deeply involved they get in research, that relationship with the mentor provides them with a lot of guidance, and one of the great things that comes out of it is a strong letter of recommendation, some good information about where the best programs are if they want to go on to a graduate level of research. We also, and this is very important to say, believe that as much as possible, students should be paid to do research. So we do try to have a stipend. I think all of our programs but one will have a stipend, and all of our summer programs have a larger stipend than the academic year programs, because we expect more from the students. There are these great other kinds of benefits. So we send students information about national conferences. And just today, I got a notice that we have, I think, already 8 students who've submitted abstracts for the National Conference on Undergraduate Research. I'm one of the primary contacts for UC San Diego and the Council on Undergraduate Research, which sponsors that. We also have scholarships like the Goldwater Scholarship, which is a competitive national scholarship in the natural sciences, engineering, and math. And we have students every year who apply for that. And I actually am the person who nominates our candidates. Those are beneficial in that one, you can get a nice cash prize from Goldwater, but the confidence students gain in competing for national awards and putting together a really strong application, those are skills that are going to stay with them, whatever they're doing afterwards. I also have the honor to nominate students for some post-baccalaureate awards, including the British Marshall and the Churchill scholarships. And even for those students who don't win those awards, although we do have students who do, even the ones who don't win, they gain that confidence. We really encourage students to think of research not only as what they do in the workspace, but as their chance to enter this community of scholars. So we give students a chance to publish. We, as I said, we encourage them to travel, to go to national conferences. We encourage them to apply for national awards, because really we want them to see in themselves the ability to not only be competitive for these awards, but to be people who are going to take leadership positions as they grow in their research and their scholarly activity.
Oh, that's great. By the way, everybody, I love that David's talking about scholarships because that's a connection to our next guest that we'll start in just a minute about financial aid and scholarships. But David, if we can squeeze in one last quick question and quick answer from you, especially for those research opportunities that are probably the most popular, the most competitive, and the most limited. Are there any particular bits of advice you'd give for families whose students are going to go for these most prestigious research positions? What makes them most competitive or successful in getting those opportunities?
One thing that everyone should do once they've found a faculty member they think they would like to work with, make sure you look at the work that faculty member has done. You can go to a department, find the faculty member's webpage, look at the work they're publishing, because you want to introduce yourself to that person, that potential mentor, as someone who's done just enough homework so that you can say, I really am excited about the work you're doing in this area, and I feel that I can contribute to what you're doing. If you present yourself to a faculty member and say, I would just like to work in your lab, and that's all you know about it, you're not presenting yourself as someone who's very serious. So there are things students can do to show that they are taking this seriously, being up on the work that's being done here, going to talks in departments, just being able to show that you're serious about research makes you more competitive.
That's fantastic advice. And I know everyone will appreciate it. David, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to move on. If you really love this stuff, you're welcome to stick around and listen to our conversation with Sylvia. But thanks again for being here. Griselda's been putting some fantastic links in the chat, everyone. And this contact information on here, that's great. I'm sure David and his team will be thrilled to hear from you and your students in the future.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And again, next up, we do have a conversation about financial aid and scholarships. And for that, our terrific guest and one of my favorite colleagues is Dr. Sylvia Marquez, who's our Executive Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships here in Enrollment Management. And if you all haven't figured out what those big fancy words are, enrollment management is admissions, financial aid, an office called the registrar that we get used to later. Especially those of you in California may know about programs like CalSOAP that do our outreach work before students even apply. It's really great how we kind of work across these areas to kind of work with your students all throughout the process. So Sylvia, thank you for being here today. Always good to see you in a different way.
Good to see you too, Jim. Thanks for having me. I almost said good morning.
And Sylvia, remind me, how long have you been here with us? Has it been 3 years now?
Just over 3 years. Yeah. October.
Terrific.
Well, yeah.
We're so glad to have you here today. And everyone, I can tell you all, as Sylvia and I talked about today's program, this is easily one of the hot topics and conversations we know everyone wants to hear about. And so it's almost nuts that we're limiting Sylvia to about 15 minutes today because we want to get to many other questions you all asked leading up to today. But we'll promise you all right now, whatever Sylvia doesn't get to today, we will very likely have her as a guest a second time as long as she's willing, and for longer when we get past the offers of admission and into that home stretch. Because we know that costs and planning is a really big part of the whole decision process. And we're just, again, so grateful that you're here with us today, Sylvia. And again, I don't want to take that time saying much more of this, but just give everyone a preview of what's still coming. So let's give you a chance to talk about a few things. Let's start with the most obviously needed question of all. How do families apply for financial aid, and are they needing to worry about being too late already?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, they're not too late. And so students who are citizens or permanent residents of the United States still have time to apply. We have a whole page on our website that's devoted to prospective students. I will say that not all the information is updated yet for 26-27. Some of it is. This page does have 26-27 information, so it's important to know. And students have until March 2nd. So if you're a California resident, March 2nd is a magical date for you every year. You can file a FAFSA if you're a citizen, or a DREAM Act application that we refer to as the CADA. All by March 2nd, the websites are there. So that's how students apply.
Great. And just because I know we do have some international families on this as well,
Right.
a lot of this isn't available to those families, but are there any particular things you'd recommend international student families be thinking about at this point in the calendar?
Definitely. Well, I think for all students, Jim, all students should be thinking about scholarships external to UCSD. So those other places that they can apply to. And that's the third link here, which is private scholarships. It's one place to start. Especially our international students should be thinking about what is that financial plan for the next 4 years if you're an incoming first year student. Because it's not a year by year, it's not a 1 year at a time. You definitely want to have a 4-year plan. The other piece is we do have scholarships that are not based on need, where you don't need to file an aid application, and that's an automatic consideration for all students, including international students, just by virtue of applying for admissions to UC San Diego. And then being admitted, we will consider you for those scholarships. And to be fair, there's not enough money to go around to everybody. We have an incredibly stellar incoming class every year. So I do want to be transparent about that. There's not enough money for everybody, I will say that. But as long as you put your best foot forward on your application, we'll work closely with admissions in making those selections for our merit scholarships.
Sure. Now, as it relates to residency, and again, we don't assume everyone's familiar with all these terms, but we're also not just talking about international or US, but we are a state school, everybody. So California versus out of state. Are non-resident students in all these various ways eligible for some of these grants you've talked about? Who determines residency? Tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yes, this is one of those moments where I get to say not it. We are not the office. We are not the office that determines residency for the campus. That is the registrar's office. So there were questions on the admissions application. That's sort of the first assessment that they will use that information to make that determination. So they make that determination, they pass that information to us, and then that helps us determine what each individual student might be eligible for. So the merit scholarships I talked about, we will consider all students, whether in-state, out-of-state, international, but for need-based grants and scholarships. So our UCSD grant, those sorts of things, Cal grant, all of that, those are restricted to California state residents.
Great. And wow, look at Griselda bringing up the pages and all this kind of and I think that's the URL that she just put in the chat too. So thanks for that, Griselda.
Residency.
So,
yeah. And
by the
that's
way,
where you would direct those questions.
Yeah. And one last little thing I'll tack on to that before we go on to our next question is just a reminder to everybody, we are a part of the University of California system. And this is the same answer as there would be for any other campus of the UCs. We know a lot of you all, your students are applying to more than one of the campuses. The answers are the same everywhere else. The policies are the same. So it's not as if you have to navigate all of those campuses individually, thank goodness.
Right.
So, yeah.
Can we go back to one really quick so that I don't forget? Griselda, could you bring that slide back up, please? The thing I put, there was a link there at the bottom, that was the private scholarship slide. So this is my shameless plug for all students and the families and supporters that are out there with your students right now. Their part-time job between now and when they graduate is applying for outside scholarships. This is a link on our site where students can start, but there are tons of search engines. Don't wait to be admitted. Start applying now. Use your personal insight questions as the basis for answering some of the scholarship prompts that donors have. Do that now. Don't wait for us to make our admissions decisions, and do that the rest of the time you're here. It's really, really, really important in terms of affordability and maybe reducing the borrowing and the work that students may take on while they're here.
That's huge. Yeah, thanks for looping back to that.
Sure.
Now, one thing I want to make sure we wrap up around that word scholarships again before we go on. You talked about a lot of our scholarships from UCSD itself are automatic. A student, if they apply, they're considered. Are there some actual scholarship forms that students have to fill out for certain things? And if so, what do they have to do to be considered for those scholarships?
Right. So we're one of those campuses that doesn't have, and you're incoming here, we're one of those campuses that does not have a separate scholarship application. We don't use CSS profile. We don't use any of those things. So your admissions application and your FAFSA or DREAM Act application, those are the things that you would need to submit.
Okay. Now, all of this is around the idea of being able to afford here, which we know is on everybody's minds. And a lot of people will use the word tuition. We'll say tuition and fees. Then we look at things like other costs, expenses, room and board, all that. And we generally use the phrase cost of attendance. So what would you want people to know about the best place to go for information on the cost of attendance and what they can expect to pay?
Sure. So on our website, which is fas.ucsd.edu, we have a cost of attendance page. Thank you, Griselda, for dropping that into the chat. What I will say is these are 25-26 numbers. We are still working on our budgets for 26-27, but this gives everyone an idea of what it could cost for 1 year on our campus. I want to spend just a minute on this, Jim, if I can.
Please do.
We've broken up our cost of attendance into two sections. So there's the top section that is the direct costs. These are the kinds of things that we as an institution would bill the family for. So the student should expect a bill for tuition if they enroll with us, right? Campus fees, health insurance if you don't have your own. Although if you have your own, I highly recommend you think about waiving out because it could save you close to $3,000. But then there are things like housing, right? So some students live on campus and some do not. If you do live on campus, you should expect to receive a bill. These are averages that we are using for housing because ultimately the housing cost will depend on where the student lives, which residence hall, how many roommates they have, what type of meal plan they get. So we use an average to give the family an idea of what it could cost. Then the bottom section are the indirect costs. So the way to think about this are they're expenses that a student is going to have just by virtue of being a student. They're going to need books. They might need transportation. They might need other personal expenses. They might need to buy laundry detergent, shampoo, those sorts of things. So we estimate what students might need for those other expenses. We won't bill you for them. And so if we add that up, that gets us a total cost of attendance. The first gold line there is the cost of attendance, estimated cost of attendance for an in-state California resident. And then for our non-resident families, you would add on, in addition to that cost, another $37,000. That's for this year, $600 to the additional cost for tuition. And that second gold line is what our non-resident families would have expected for this academic year. Like I said, we're still in the process of updating, but it gives you an idea of what a student might need for 1 year. And it's also then based on where they live. Are they at home? Are they living on campus? Are they living off campus in an apartment?
Yeah. And just a reminder to everybody, again, we are a public institution here in the state of California. So when Sylvia says some of this stuff's still being worked out, we have to change our tuition and fees based on what the state legislature and the University of California system figures out. One key thing, if we haven't said this already, I can't remember if you've mentioned it or not, Sylvia, but we do have what we call the tuition stability program here, which means that this figure is the figure that we will arrive at for fall of 26 is what your students will pay for those next several years. When I went to college somewhere else, and I'll bet for you too, Sylvia, we know that what was much more common was that colleges would raise these prices by a little bit every year. Now, that'll still happen with housing and some of these other expenses, but the tuition and fee stuff, we're trying to make that as predictable as we can. I'm really proud that our system does that.
And it's just to be super clear on that, Jim, because I think that's important. The UC system-wide tuition and fee number there near the top is the figure that stays flat for a family from the year that the student enrolls for up to 6 years.
Yep. The
The
living
rest of these
expenses would go up.
figures,
All the indirect cost
the
categories.
campus fees could change.
Yep.
It's exactly
Yep.
the health insurance, all of that could change, but it's that system-wide tuition fee. That's our commitment from the UC system. And we take these numbers along with the aid application and we figure out how much each individual student is eligible for in terms of what types of awards, how much in each award, and we try to get to this cost of attendance.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for that. And again, families, we know you're looking at this kind of stuff for all kinds of schools right now. We hope that other schools around the country are laying out these costs in roughly the same way. And the same will be true when Sylvia and her team get ready to offer financial aid packages to help with these costs. We always hope that'll be laid out in a way similar to other universities. We can't promise you that, but please know that across the profession, we're always trying to do that as much as we can.
And that's a great point. You know, for families that might be looking at this and having complete sticker shock right now, this is just one half of the equation, right? The other half of the equation is the aid that we can offer that will help offset some of these charges, our costs. So I just want to be clear about that too.
Yeah. And again, folks, you can hear we try to be very transparent here. The biggest help is going to be given to California students because we are a California institution. And just as in your own states, you would want your state schools to do that more for you than students coming to you from California. So, but we love what we can do for everybody. I know we only have a couple more minutes, but I know we have a couple key more things we want to talk with everybody about. For one of the other pieces of this equation is students having jobs while they're in college. There could be part-time work, there could be work study. Tell us a little bit about that world and how it relates to your work.
Yeah, for most students that receive financial aid, there will be this expectation that includes loan and potentially a work study offer if the student has financial need. And so there is plenty of campus employment for students. And I think that's the link that Griselda just dropped in the chat. So students can look for jobs all over campus. So don't think of this as having to be just in a lab. It could be in your residence hall. It could be at the bookstore. It could be in our office as an advisor. And so there are plenty of jobs on campus. And then in addition to that, the student might be offered work study. And everybody always asks what work study is. No one understands work study. It's a little bit of a complicated program, but basically what it is it's part of your financial aid. You find your job. There's a benefit to the employer because part of your wage is subsidized by the federal government. And it helps you as a student when you report your earnings in the future on your financial aid application. Whatever you earn, we don't want to count it against you. That might reduce your aid in a future year. So that's just one way to think about it. Employers are definitely looking for work study. All of our students are work study students. So it might give you a little bit of a benefit when you're searching for a job.
Yeah, great. And then one last thing, I hope people don't feel this is the downer, but again, we're always about keeping people informed. There have definitely been some changes brewing around financial aid at the federal level. I know some call it the big, beautiful bill. I don't know if I feel comfortable calling it that, but the big, big legislative bill that came through this summer. What are the changes that families most need to know that have happened or could be coming as a result of those changes?
Sure. I would say for this audience that we're talking to, there are two that are particularly important. And to be fair, not all of that legal analysis is done on the bills. We don't even have all the final language yet. So bear with us. But two in particular. One is students who are borrowing loans or have Pell Grants. Please enroll full-time, whatever that is at your institution. For us, that's at least 12 units. And not enrolling full-time could mean that we have to reduce your loans. And that's a brand new concept for us. And so if you are really in need of that funding, being full-time is really, really important. That's the first one. The second one that our parents should be listening for is right now there is no maximum on the Parent Plus loan that might be offered through the Department of Education, as long as between all the awards we don't exceed the cost of attendance. But starting in July 1st of this year, there is a new loan limit to that parent loan, both annually and in aggregate, so overall borrowing. That maximum is limited to $20,000 a year. And the aggregate borrowing is $65,000. If you maximize 20,000, you're here for 4 years, that's 80,000, but that's not the math the department came up with or the legislation. It came up with 65,000 somehow. So it's just important for families to know that, especially our non-resident families that might file a FAFSA. If you need to borrow more than 20,000, that's going to be our limit that we can offer you. You might need to be thinking about, are you going to borrow more from another resource, another financial institution to help bridge any gap that you might have. So something to be thinking about as we go forward. We are working on a webpage on our site that's devoted to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and all of these implications. Those are just two that I've mentioned. There are more. But those, I think, are the two most relevant for this population that we're speaking with today.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And again, folks, we want to keep you informed, and just to make sure, because we know for some of you, this is like just spilling over in your heads to hear all this. But just to really make clear, this last part of things in particular that Sylvia talked about, this is information that applies to anywhere your student could end up going to college, not just UC San Diego. And again, we always try to make sure these webinars give you a mix of those two kinds of information, both what's specific to us and what will help you everywhere. And Sylvia, thank you so much for being with us today. And again, thanks for hopefully already agreeing that we'll have you back for a longer conversation later in the cycle here. But we're just so grateful to have you on today. I'll tell you all, Sylvia is just not only a fantastic asset to this campus, but we're so grateful that she's so involved with the leadership of her profession at the national level and very informed about all these things that are going on. So Sylvia, we're grateful for all you do. And thanks for spending a little time with everybody today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Congratulations to all the families in the audience that are going through this process right now. It's an enormous step, and you should be very proud of where you are in the process. So thank you.
Thank you again, Sylvia. And everyone, again, we do have some more time left today, and we always like to devote that to whatever we think might be on your minds in general. So we hope you've really enjoyed our two guests. I know I have. They're just terrific colleagues. And again, part of this is just letting you know the fabric of so many people around this campus being involved in one way or another of supporting what your students will experience if they decide to come here. So we wish you and all of them all the best. And you will not be shocked at all when I tell you that when you got a chance to ask us questions as a part of your registration form, easily the most common question everyone has is the most expected question this time of year is, how is my student going to be considered for admission? And can you tell me more about that? So I want us to take at least a few minutes here to talk about this today. Those of you that have done this webinar before might know that I devote a little bit of time to this every month. And it's one of the several reasons that we love that Griselda and Admissions records these sessions, and you're welcome to go back to them and see what you might want. We had housing on one of the ones back in the fall, a few other guests. We had somebody talking about study abroad, and every monthly webinar, I'll talk about some of these general things. So I want to talk with you all a little bit about admissions and a few of the other main themes that kind of emerged from the many, many questions we got when you all registered for the event. So let me just start with some really basic things about how the math works here. For one, I will say that in the several years I've been at University of California, San Diego now, I love how much that the UC system overall, how much we do as a system to make very transparent the outcomes of past years. I would argue much more than a lot of other institutions around the country, public or private institutions. I'm not going to try to point you all to those websites today, but I'll say that if you want to know details on things like what percentage of our applicants got in last year, was it different for students seeking certain majors than others? We have all of that on the UC web pages. It's pretty cool and pretty helpful. And you don't have time for me to rattle off all that stuff right now with the rest of our hour today. But just so you'll know, like any admissions office in the country, what our admissions office here, who I get to work with a lot, what they do is, again, what every institution has to do. We know how much size we have in our freshman class. We have space. We know that there's always typically a certain percentage of students that we offer admission who are going to say, thank you, I want you, versus, and this is a really good thing to remind your students how much power they have. A good few students will say, thanks for the offer of admission, but I'm going somewhere else. And so we have to think all of that through every year when we decide how many offers of admission we can make. And that's what we'll do first here is make offers of admission and see if by our response deadline we come to where we need it to be. We've got a lot of pressures on this campus to not come in too large for housing or the number of students and the number of spots in freshman English classes, all those kinds of just classic things. But we also certainly want to give all the space we can because we love to give access as much as we can. So we do this process in a way that has to work backwards from there. There's no question, this is a very popular school. And if you were to look up our numbers last year, you would find that for freshman applicants, first years we call them here, it was probably the second largest applicant pool in the country, I think it worked out to be again. Now, we love to brag about that in some ways, but in other ways, we don't like at all the fact that that means we probably deny admission to a lot more students than most other schools in the country. We hate that part of our job, but it is part of our job. And so that's where your students are right now. And we want you to be encouraging them to them, but also know that if we end up not being able to offer admission to them, it doesn't mean we don't even like them. It very well likely means we think they're terrific, but we don't have room for all the terrific students we would like here. So we have to make very difficult decisions as fast as we can. We do that as a reminder with a holistic review process. Some people think holistic sounds weird. Maybe comprehensive review sounds better to you, but either way, we don't just make quick decisions with one or two numbers. We look at a lot of things, all those things your students are turning in. With the first year students, it's really going to look at things like their PIQs or personal insight questions they answer, things about the details in their high school transcript, not just meeting our A through G course minimums, but going beyond them. We will consider things about the majors they want because some majors are more in demand than others. And we'll see what we can do out of that. As a reminder, we don't use test scores at all. And we also don't use letters of recommendation at all. So those are two things your students may be using if they're applying to other kinds of schools, but we don't use those two pieces of information. And then when we make our offers of admission, and again, we're kind of making our best guess as to what percentage of students will accept the offer. There's always the likelihood that we will guess wrong. And because we would be in big trouble if we came in with too many students, what we will typically do, and a lot of other highly selective schools will do, is we will go ahead and risk coming in a little below the number of students we wanted to have by the end of our response deadline. And that's what a wait list is for. So when it comes time for us to make offers of admission to first years, that'll be in mid-March. Some of you are families of transfers, and this will happen just about a month later in mid-April. In each of those cases, when we make offers, when we make decisions known to everybody at once that day, your students will either be admitted, denied, or offered a spot on the wait list. And so this is how this math works. If we offer them a spot on the wait list, it's very important for you to hear that wording I'm using. We are not putting them on the wait list. We are offering them a chance, and they will get a communication that says, at this moment, the answer isn't yes, but if we end up coming in a little low, we may very well be able to come back, and you're one of the students we think we could come back to if there ends up being a little bit more space than we thought there would. So do you want us to call you, or are you going to move on? And a student has to respond to that waitlist invitation to say, yes, I want to be on it, or that's it. We won't consider them any further. So we want you to just understand how that's going to work as they kind of go through those coming months. And at that point, we try to let those waitlist students know as fast as we can after the deadline, but it really all comes down to what's going on with the students we admitted first. If your students are denied, we don't tend to reverse those things very often, but just for the record, when it comes later, you'll hear that there is a very brief appeal process. We don't often overturn decisions based on appeal. But the process does nonetheless exist, and there's a reason it exists. Sometimes it is the right thing for us to reconsider things. So that's a little bit about how all this kind of stuff goes with timelines. We have an incredible applicant pool, and that can sound both encouraging and scary right now, I know. But I can tell you that with our first years, for example, a lot of these students, when we look at both a weighted and unweighted GPA, the students across the entire applicant pool have done very well. And so that's why holistically we'll use a lot of other factors, and it isn't very easy to predict who will get in just by looking at a couple of numbers. But that hopefully gives you a little sense of how we're thinking about things, how this timeline goes. Again, first-year students will be aiming to get an answer of one kind or another out to everybody in mid-March, transfers in mid-April. I do want in particular with transfers to talk about how a few things are different than some of the things I just said. For one thing, I talked about weighted and unweighted GPAs with high school students, and we don't weight GPAs with transfer students coming from community colleges or other universities. We also look a lot more at the GPA itself, and we look less at some of the things like the essay type stuff. But mainly, there is a very healthy section or portion of our majors that are what we call major prep or major preparatory requiring majors. And knowing Griselda, she's going to probably put a link to what those are in the chat. But one way or another, if your student has applied to a transfer major that has a list of courses that the student must take before they come here, I cannot overstate how important that major prep list is to things. Some of your students are applying to majors that don't have this. So again, certain majors, this will be a thing. And I need to emphasize that if your student even has a perfect, I don't know, 4.0 GPA from their college or their university, if they are applying to a major that has 5 classes required for major prep, and they don't show us they will have all 5 of those completed by the end of the spring, that might be it right there. We have so many talented students, and we are under very high expectations from our state that when students come in here as transfers, they will be able to get out in 2 years. And so that's the calculations we've done about having major prep requirements. Again, for some majors more than others, this is an issue. What it takes to get in, the rest of it is going to be competitive based on their GPA and a few other things. Some majors are, again, just like with first years, more in demand than others, and we only have so much space. So that will play into things. I want to go back to advising both first year and transfer families here to say it is never a bad idea for your student to list a second choice or alternative major. Now, if they list that, it might be that we admit them to the alternative major instead of their first choice. And if they're looking at some of the most selective majors on our campus, they may not be able to switch into that later. So again, we always want to be transparent with you and say that if we give them an alternate major, that may be what helps them get admitted to the university overall instead of not getting admitted. But they only have so much space in some of these areas. And so it gets complicated. I'm sorry for that. But we also want you to understand that that's the reason for all the variety. Going back to the more general advice for everybody, I'm not going to go much into housing today, but I will note that, again, we had our leader for housing, Himlada Javiri, on one of our fall webinars. You can go back and learn a lot more about our housing options. But again, we continue to have a lot of questions about that. I do want to emphasize that if your student is admitted, as long as they meet the housing deadlines that come a little bit after our admissions deadlines, we are able to guarantee housing for the first 2 years your student would be here at campus. We have been expanding housing by leaps and bounds on this campus to the point that we are tied with one other institution for the highest number of residence hall beds of any university in the United States. So when I say we have housing here, I really mean we have housing here. But again, like all these things, there's deadlines and your students need to meet it. I want to now connect from housing over to the college system we have here. And a provost from one of our 8 colleges was one of our guests at our November webinar. The college system is something every one of your students will belong to if they end up coming here. It's not a very common thing at all in the US, but those of you that really are geeks about higher ed may recognize what we do here as kind of feeling like Oxford and Cambridge in England, in the United Kingdom. And what we do with the colleges is we give your student a chance to be part of a smaller group in addition to the big one. So just to give you an example, if your student had been an incoming first year or freshman in our class this past fall of 2025, while they would have been a part of, I think, our largest first year class ever of about 7,800 students, we didn't have more than about 950 to 1,000 students in any of the 8 colleges that these students belong to. Their college had a lot to do with what part of campus they lived in most of the time. It had nothing to do with what they were majoring in. So a student in any major could belong to any college. And it did start those students off in a way that got them very particular general education requirements. It meant that within their college and therefore their kind of residential neighborhood on campus, they had their own advising and student guidance staff some of their own activities just for students in that college. But they can still interact with the entire rest of the campus as well. So that is a neat thing about housing. I do want to take another second just to remind you all about. And here's the thing, for both majors and colleges, your students have gotten emails from us in just the last few days reminding them that even though our application deadline was at the end of November, beginning of December, that we are giving your students all the way until January 31st to be able to go into their applicant portal and change their minds, pack as often as they want, I guess, about their first choice major, their alternate major, and their ranking of 4 of the 8 colleges. What are their top preferences as they read about the colleges and get to know them? We're able to place over 99% of our students into one of those top 4 choices. And for the first time this year, we've even given applicants the chance to check a box that says, I have no preference what college you place me in. We actually hope a lot of your students won't finish with that answer. But on the other hand, we think for some of them, it just is one less thing to worry about. But I do want to emphasize, once we place them in a college, that's the college they belong to. They don't get to hop around. And again, even if your student, when they apply, check the box that says, I have no preference, they can now come in between now and the end of this month and update that to have a preference and rank 4 of the colleges as their first, second, third, and fourth choice. Really great tools on our website to be able to learn about the colleges and learn more about what's different about their gen ed requirements. Some of the things that students that belong there tend to be really focused on these kinds of global issues or things about how they approach serving society or viewing the world or all those kinds of things. Some of the other questions you all have asked me, because I know we're almost out of time here, I just want to really emphasize, especially following up on our website about some of this. I'm going to put one little URL in here of my own that I didn't warn Griselda I wanted today. But several of you all have asked us questions about outcomes for students. Some of you will use a phrase like return on investment or job placement rates or some of those things. I think this webpage here on the University of California website is a nice starting point resource for you to see things about how many of our students are employed or in grad school after a certain amount of time. What is the salary of these students after a certain amount of time? Now, any of these surveys relies on students getting back to us, which not all of them do. But I hope you'll find that a great example of how you can learn more about outcomes for our students. Just terrific stuff. And if Sylvia were still here this afternoon, she'd probably help me add on to that, that not only do we have a fantastic graduation, job placement, grad school placement rate across this campus and all the UCs, but we're really happy that with the aid we offer, only about a third of our students graduate with any student debt that we know about. That's far below the national average. And even then, the amount of debt those students have is a good 10,000 below the national average. So that's another outcome you should be aware of. Just one or two last things, because I know we're technically even over time now, but I do want to just share with you all one or two things that respond to some of the most burning questions that people asked me. Some of these were just about general location, safety, and quality of life. We are on the edge between San Diego and La Jolla. La Jolla technically isn't a city, it's a neighborhood of San Diego, but any of you who have been here know it has a very different feel. So it's a very safe, if not downright boring part of town compared to what you might picture in some other places. But we're also very connected to San Diego overall. When it comes to what you and your students can expect, we really encourage you to come visit this campus. And some of you might be waiting, of course, on admissions decisions to do that. But we really hope people will see for themselves. You can check a lot out online or make it here. And then we do want to encourage you, if your students are admitted, that they will come and you will come with them to something we'll call Triton Day that'll be available in April as a chance for them to really get to see some of this stuff as part of a big celebration themselves. There are so many other great questions that we get each time, and I'm sorry we can't answer them all. We do want to make sure we finish on time, relatively speaking, though. So since it's 5:02 on the Pacific Coast, I think we will go ahead and wrap it up. I love that Griselda's kind of closing picture here gives us a chance to see a view from up in the sky of our pier that's part of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography in the edge of campus. If you all have your students come here, I bet you will not be upset about visiting them from time to time. And we really wish you the best of luck with this process. We know that every day can feel like a week or a month right now while you wait with anticipation for this outcome. So hang in there, and please know that we're getting this done as fast as we can. We'll do another one of these webinars in February, and we'll tell you more about that in the coming days. We hope we'll see you there again. And again, any of you that are seeing this afterwards with a recording, we hope this has been helpful for you as well. Everybody have a great evening and go Tritons.